Maverick Physical Therapy, welcome. Welcome to a little Kinetic Lincoln Friday, little episode in which we're going to talk about a festive Christmas kind of tradition and gathering and tie that into the body. That is the elf on the shelf. Christmas, what a great time of the year. San Diego, phenomenal weather. The elf on the shelf. I've got three of these little guys here. Son Maverick just really loves the heck out of them. And my wife and I, for years, have really enjoyed the little guy as well. It's kind of a goofy, funny little time. As tradition and as the story goes, the elf on the shelf changes position within the household every night. The kids, when they wake up the next morning, go on this hunt to find the elf. The elf is sent on this mythical, epic mission from the big man himself, Santa Claus, to provide these magical powers to help corral Santa's herd of little kiddos, and the fact that the elf is going to watch the kids and he's going to watch their behavior. He's going to report to Santa upon who has been naughty and who has been nice. And that's why I love the elf on the shelf. The magic of the elf is lost if the elf is touched by the kids. I think they instinctively go on the all-time naughty list. While kind of looking here on the back of the package, the elf on the shelf, a Christmas tradition. It's pretty interesting how the author kind of they entitled this little Christmas poetic letter to each and every family, and it talks about how to preserve the elf's Christmas magic, the children are not allowed to touch it. However, talking to the elf was encouraged. He loves to be talked to. My children shared many secrets with the elf, and while he was under strict orders not to talk to them, the elf was under no such orders where grown-ups were concerned. Unwittingly, the tradition provided an added benefit. It helped the children to better control themselves. All it took was a gentle reminder that the elf is watching for errant behavior to be modified. It says at the end, enjoy this tradition and make it your own. A few things on the back of this that really kind of touch me and connect to my heart are to preserve the elf's Christmas magic, and how the children shared many secrets with the elf, and it helped the children to better control themselves. The elf on the shelf, when it comes to the body, I've always thought of this as a little thing down in the old foot and the ankle here. It's the skeleton of the right foot and ankle of the subtalar joint. Woo! Subtalar joint, man. It really kicks off this epic domino-like effect throughout the chain. The calcaneus and the talus, which form that subtalar joint. On the calcaneus, you have this bony kind of protuberance. It's a little bony protuberance that kind of underneath it runs a flexor hallucis longus. An interesting, very unique muscle that attached to the back of the posterior aspect of kind of the fibula, wraps down and around, and then goes to the base of that distal phalanx right there. The sustum taculum tali is that little bony protuberance. That is the shelf, my friends. The elf is the talus. The talus, interestingly enough, no muscles attached to the talus. We have the subtalar joint. We have the mid-tarsal joint, which is the talonavicular joint, which is a ball and a socket kind of a joint. Back to what we talked about before, the elf on the shelf was a tool that was used to help kind of control children in a good way, for them to be nice, to do good things to others, just to be great little kiddos and have some good, clean fun. It also was a way to kind of explore and to be creative. as the box again kind of ends, it says, make it your own. Everybody's sequencing of movement, it's a little bit different, but biomechanically yet it has to happen the same. The elf preserves the Christmas story and tradition we're told, which is what the subtalar joint does with regard to our movement story as humans and our personal movement story and how we act to preserve fundamental skills. It's interesting in how this is such a treasured nugget and tradition that we really don't really know about and pay a whole lot of attention to. We've got that little elf, the Talus, again, sitting on top of that Sussum Tali, the Calcaneus, which tells Santa, the big man, what everybody's doing. He's going to tell us, hey, if there's a problem at the home base, there's a problem at the home base. He's going to tell us if there's a problem kind of at that neighboring kind of house, the knee. He's going to tell us big time what's going on at the hip. So when we assess and reassess, when we run our evals, when we implement our dynamic kind of three-dimensional movement progressions, we need to take a look at the foot and the ankle and monitor it for its ability to move three-dimensionally, but we also, if we see things that biomechanically are not correct and that are inefficient, we need to start taking a look at the hip as well. So biomechanically, let's run through this a little bit quick. This could be a little bit chaotic in terms of what the elf on the shelf does. Foot comes in contact with the ground and gait, or such as a squat, a lunge, a single leg anterior reach, a single leg hop. The calcaneus in the frontal plane, he is going to evert. So he's going to drop down and in. In that rotational plane, down in the foot it changes, AB and adduction, it's going to internally rotate or adduct. It's also going to plantar flex, meaning he's going to kind of tilt down, which involves a lot kind of in that mid-tarsal joint, that calcaneocuboid and talonavicular. When that calcaneus acts the way that he should, when he behaves, when that shelf holds up the elf, the talus then plantar flexes. He drops down. He adducts / internally rotates in that kind of rotational plane. So he rotates on in towards the body's midline, that distal kind of aspect. He also kind of everts a little bit, but because the shelf falls faster than the elf, we get this kind of relative abduction kind of phenomenon here in the transverse plane, because the calcaneus is moving faster than the talus. At the mid-tarsal joint, we get this nasty kind of, in a good way nasty, unlocking effect that allows the foot to shape to the contour and the surface changes in the ground. We get this relative abduction because, again, the talus internally rotates / adducts. And a lot of times, interestingly enough, with this stuff, you'll see a lot of medial heel whipping. So you'll see a lot of, let's say, the heel and the talus, kind of the heel will shoot to the inside and the distal part will go to the inside. A lot of times that's the body's way of kind of trying to lock out that mid-tarsal joint to get some congruency, get some stabilization somewhere where it should not. It's like opening and sneaking a peek of your stocking before Christmas. Back to the mid-tarsal joint, you've got this washcloth ringing out effect that we've talked about before that turns this midfoot, the navicular, the cuboid, the three cuneiform, into this kind of this inverted kind of like effect. So it's going to invert as the calcaneus and as the talus kind of evert, which gives us relative inversion of that mid-tarsal joint. So relative motion, distal segment in relation to the proximal segment, what's happening? It's almost like passing a car on the highway. If you're going 80 and a car is going 70, you pass them, you look in your rear view mirror, it appears as if that car is going backwards in reverse. It's not. It's going forward. Same thing in function. We need to have to happen throughout segments and bones concurrently. The tibia, because the elf drives down and in, kind of everts a little bit, allows this tibia to rotate in and this fibula to rotate in. They're kind of offset. Tibia is more anterior than the posterior due to those rotational kind of disassociation-like properties that we need to kind of turn on our proprioceptors with added stretch, compression, and tension, telling us that, hey, that adduction, that internal rotation, as well as that plantar flexion that the calcaneus and the talus go on into, that nice kind of eversion of those guys to give us that good relative eversion of that subtalar joint as well. Hey, that's a big deal. And that foot comes in contact with the ground. Here's half a pelvis right here. The pelvis on the left side is going to drop down and in because everything rotates medially like a tornado from the ground up. Faster at the bottom, tibia rotates on in, fibula then rotates on in, femur rotates and follows that tibia, and then the pelvis will rotate to the left as well. But the guys down at the bottom, progressively on the way up to the top, need to be rotating faster to give us that good internal rotation in the right hip, that good loading in the back of that posterior hip capsule and all those external kind of posterior lateral pelvic girdle musculature, the power horse of the body. Made me want to sound like Tim the Toolman Taylor right there. I don't know if you guys remember that show, Home Improvement. Pelvis, going to drop down and in, adduct. So, and we need some good flexion right here. Because that occurs, we have the pelvis rotating anteriorly, but we have, in that sagittal plane, we have the femur rotating kind of up and posterior, faster than what the pelvis is, rotating anterior to give us some good flexion and loading at that hip. So with that said, three-dimensional properties of the hip, three-dimensional properties of the foot and the ankle, we need to pay attention to and rely upon that elf on the shelf and think of him as the catalyst, the mentor that's driving and allowing this chain to collapse. What a beautiful thing it is, like chopping down that Christmas tree and getting him ready for Christmas Day. It's that chopping down effect that allows us to embrace the effect of gravity, momentum, inertia, and ground reaction force three-dimensionally. It allows us to, as the elf on the shelf tradition has it, control the children, but in this story, our movement story, to control our body. Subtalar joint, all these little mechanoreceptors and sensory feedback systems collaborating with each other, sending information to the brain stem, and providing a unique, sophisticated layout that's great and beneficial to Santa. It's great and beneficial to the brainstem, all that great afferent, all that sensory input that we need to know exactly where the body is in relation to itself and in space. We need that disassociation. We need that good relative motion, that effect of the car passing another, so that we have this continual stretch, compression, and tension throughout kind of this lengthening throughout the system. We need that good sensory motor integration. We need that good gather, analyze, interpret information to anticipate, select, and execute the most appropriate response. The elf on the shelf, huge driver into the success of how our body loads to explodes. Rule number one, the body, most importantly, to sustain movement, to be consistent and efficient at that, we must realize and understand that movement is a direct response to how well the body loads. It's a direct replication of that, just as children receiving their toys and their gifts from Santa. It's a direct result based on this elf on the shelf, that information that the elf is providing Santa to then dish out all those goodies, all those great things for everybody to be happy. Guys, Kinetic Linking Friday, elf on the shelf, Sussum's Taculum tali, talus on the calcaneus, eversion of that subtalar joint, the big rudder and driver, and big overlooked kind of driving system throughout this chain. We need to pay attention to it. In version 2, we're going to hammer home on a few things and ideas in terms of what really gets this guy going. Pass that along.